Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. So today we will be looking at veteran loadouts. Now veterans have changed significantly from 7th to 8th edition, and they were once the favoured troop choice of many an Imperial Guard commander, and now that has changed. And so I think a lot of commanders have sort of given up on their veterans already, but interestingly I've gone sort of the opposite way, and I'm thinking, hang on, these veterans could be very useful. They could be very, very good indeed, but we have to have a look at how we're going to run them. Okay, now basically let's cover some of the changes from veterans now, from 7th to 8th. Basically the big one is they've been moved from troops to elites. Now a lot of people were crying and throwing the toys out the pram about this because a lot of them had lost the ability to field their armies. You need your troop choices and that kind of stuff, and they couldn't do that anymore with veterans. But I say it's not a big deal because you do have the detachment that allows you to take multiple elite choices. Basically, your elites become your troops in that regard. So it's not the end of the world. You do get less command points for taking that formation, though. So I can understand why people are pissed, but it's still perfectly possible to run your all-veteran army if you want to. They lost access to doctrines. So they used to buy your veterans, and you had 3 optional upgrades to sort of specialise them. You could take camo cloaks to make them sneaky beaky. You can take carapace armour to make them kind of like assault troops. And you could take demolition experts, which meant that they got a demo charge and everyone in the squad was armed with melter bombs. But that's gone now. Now there's nothing like that. Which is a shame, because I was actually a big, even though I didn't use veterans a lot, when I did use them, my preferred method was to take them in the old Emperor's Blade Assault Company, shotguns, carapace armour, melter guns and all that. And I like to run them as assault troops, but can't do that anymore. They've still got access to shotguns, that's fine. One interesting note is they now get 3 special weapons and a heavy flamer, and that will be a factor in some of the loadouts that we'll be looking at today. So yes, they're the changes. There's probably a few others I've missed, but they're the main changes. No longer troops, lost access to doctrines, and now they can take a heavy flamer on top of 3 special weapons. So, I think there are 2 or 3 unique and good loadouts to the veterans. We'll start off with the classic that I think has stood the test of time, Melter Vets. So everyone knows and loves Melter Vets from 7th edition. It was a pretty standard tactic. You take a squad of veterans, you don't give them many upgrades if you don't want to, but the key was you took 3 melter guns and you shoved them in the back of a chimera, and anything that got close to your lines you jumped out and melter gunned the shit out of it and killed it, or hopefully killed it anyway. I still think this is a good loadout. I don't think it is the best loadout anymore, but I still think it's a good idea, and the reason why I still like this loadout is because of its specialisation. There is a temptation in 8th edition to mix and match weapons on squads, and I think Melter Vets, I don't think that's a good idea for veterans. I think veterans are still a good, cheap way of an Imperial Guard player getting, a 10-man squad with some decent special weapons in there, and I think keeping Melter Vets cheap is now the key to their success, because melter guns have gone up in points. I believe they're now 12 points per model for Guard, so that's 2 points more than what you were paying. Not a huge difference, but I think the key to Melter Vets is to keep them cheap, because you're going to be sticking them in the back of a chimera, and the chimeras have got significantly more expensive. Now, how would I run a chimera for a Melter Vet squad? I'd be tempted to go either as cheap as possible or as expensive as possible, but not in between. So either you look at the Chimera purely as a cheap delivery system, in which case you shove 2 heavy bolters on that thing and leave it. That's the cheapest way. Or you put 2 heavy flamers on it, and that's a lot more expensive, but you treat the Chimera as more than just a metal box. You treat it as, I'm going to be getting close to get these melter guns in range. I also want to be able to, my Chimera to be able to do something. Honestly, I think both options are fine. I think either taking the dual heavy flamer option or taking the heavy bolter option is fine. It purely comes down to personal preference. Do you like cheap metal boxes, or do you like workable metal boxes? You could argue that you want to put them in a Taurox instead, and that's not the worst idea in the world. I mean, the Taurox does cost, let me just find it. The Taurox does cost 55 points, but don't forget you've got to, I don't think it's any cheaper, because you've got to spend 55 points, but then you've also got to buy 2 autocannons for that thing. And 2 autocannons is another 30 points, so really it's 85 points. So what you've got to ask yourself when you're choosing between the heavy bolter Taurox or heavy bolter Chimera, or the Taurox for cheap transports for your melter vets, is it worth? Do you want the Taurox, which is 1 point cheaper but less durable, less wounds, but is 2 inches faster, or do you want the Chimera, which is more durable, with more wounds, it's only slightly less fast, and they both put out about the equivalent firepower? One does 6 heavy bolter shots, one does 4 autocannon shots. It's Taurox to Chimera. It's not a there's not a huge difference. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't go out running and buying loads of Tauroxes for your veterans, is all I'm going to say. If you've got Chimeras, that they should be fine. Yeah, so that's it basically. Obviously, if you've got a load of Chimeras with multi-laser heavy bolter, it's only a 2 point difference. It's not the end of the world. That's fine. But I wouldn't put them in a multi-laser heavy flamer version. I don't think that's a good idea. So melter vets, I would keep them as cheap as possible now to offset the cost of your relatively expensive transports. Would I stick a heavy flamer in there? Probably not. My idea behind melter vets is that they are a suicide unit. Now they don't have access to their carapace armor. I generally think you're probably best just keeping them cheap as shit, and not much more to be said there. Not much more to add on. I mean, you could maybe. That's your classic melter vets. If you're going to go all in on your melter veterans, you could consider going shotguns on them, and a heavy flamer, and 3 melter guns, and heavy flamer fucking Chimera, and basically you take 2, maybe 3 squads of those. Put a power weapon, power axe, power maul on the sergeant, on each sergeant. Maybe throw in a priest as well, a priest or 2. And you could maybe charge that down your enemy's throat and jump out and be like, well, we can assault from transports now, so let's go forward, turn 1, turn 2, get out, move 6 inches, shotgun, heavy flamer, melter gun your ass, and charge and power weapon with rerolls and whatever. It could be done. It could be done. Just not sure how effective it would be. I'm more inclined to keep my melter veterans nice and cheap, and suicidal. That's what I prefer them. That's how I prefer to take them. But I still think there is some merit to be taken in the shotgun assault vets now. It's just the fact they don't have carapace armor really makes me not like it as much anymore. The other main loadout I would run is shooty vets. Not something that we've seen a lot of, but something that I now think is a good idea because veterans have lost access to carapace armor. You take a squad of veterans, you take 3 plasma guns on the unit, you give the sergeant a bolter, and you take a las cannon as well, and you sit them in a piece of terrain holding an objective, and you just use them as a nice fire support unit. It's not even that expensive anymore to do that. I mean, we're looking at 60 points for the veterans, 21 points for the plasma guns, 20 points for the las cannon, and a point for the bolter. What's that, 102 points? That's not a bad idea. The reason why I quite like it is because it's relatively cheap for a long-range fire support option. They can receive orders, and because they're going to be further back, they're going to be more survivable. I mean, think about it this way. I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but you want to force as a guard commander, we can now very easily force our enemies to shoot at things they may not want to necessarily shoot at. So if you've got 2 or 3 of these, I'd say 3 of these long-range veteran support squads sat in cover, firing away, it's cheaper than a Chimera as a fire support option. You can get 2 of these squads for the cost of a Lehman Russ with some upgrades. So they're putting out a decent amount of firepower for a decent points level. They receive orders, no problem. And you've got these units sat at the back shooting away, but your enemy is being forced to shoot at the 100 conscripts that are running down his throat. He's got to deal with those conscripts, because those conscripts are going to start tying him up. They're going to start las gunning things down. They're going to be sat on objectives. They're going to be roadblocking him. Your opponent is not going to have time to shoot at the veterans, because they're so busy shooting at the conscripts. And you've got to remember, especially if you're running like a heavy infantry army, most opponents won't really know the difference between a conscript model charging at them and a veteran model shooting them. So they're kind of less of an obvious target than, let's say, a Lehman Russ, which is a really obvious target. Your opponent sees Lehman Russ, he knows that's fire support. Your opponent sees a squad hanging around the back in a bit of cover. He doesn't really know what that's doing. He just knows, oh, it's more infantry. So it's something to consider. So they would be my 2 ways of running veterans. 1, long range support, plasma, las cannon, love it. The other one would be close range melter guns. So very, not much has changed. Honourable mention, if rattlings weren't so damn cheap, I'd probably consider snipers on a veteran squad, but the problem is rattlings are so damn cheap. I would avoid grenade launchers. I would avoid flamethrowers, only because special weapon squads can do it just as well. And I would honourable mention, maybe put a plasma pistol on the melter squad sergeant, maybe. But yeah, I would basically, thanks to the lack of doctrines, it's now much more clear cut that it's either melter vets or plasma vets. But no longer is it so clear cut to always put them in a Chimera. Now, one last thing I want to mention, and this is definitely a bit of an outrider, but it's definitely worth an honourable mention, is if you are going to go for an assault veteran squad, how do you want to do it? You can take a Chimera, but putting your assault squad, we're talking shotguns, melter, plasma pistol, power sword, whatever, the full shebang, consider a Valkyrie. Okay, very much consider a Valkyrie. Valkyrie brings a lot of fire support to the table as it is. You can get it forward pretty much wherever you want turn 1, and then disembark out of it and give yourself a guaranteed turn 2 charge. It's definitely worth considering. I think it's possible to get a turn 1 charge with Valkyrie as well, because what you could do is you could grav shoot insertion. You could fly 45 inches forward, grav shoot out the back. The grav shoot counts as a disembark, not a deep strike. And you could definitely get a turn 1 charge using your assault squads like that. I'm going to be probably doing a video on the Valkyrie and what to best use as a turn 1 assault unit, or how to best load them out. But yeah, definitely, you know, if you're a player that uses 2-3 Valkyries, having 30 veterans in there jumping out, turn 1 assault, power swords, all that shebang, it's definitely worth a consider. Definitely worth considering. But yeah, guys, they're my sort of 2/3 loadouts for veterans. You've got the cheap Melter Vet squad, the slightly more expensive long range shooty squad, and then you've also got the very expensive assault squad: Valkyrie, heavy flamer, triple melter, shotguns, power sword, plasma pistol. I think that's very expensive, but I think it has a lot of punch. But and no one will expect you to do a turn 1 charge as guard, and there's something to be said for the psychological impact of doing it. Okay. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Tell me your experience with veterans. I have to admit, I don't have a lot of experience with veterans. I will be trying them out. But yeah, if you guys have probably used veterans more than I have, tell me if you're still using them in 8th edition, and if you are still using them, tell me how you've got them to work. Long range fire support, close range assault, which one works best? Okay guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.